we see so many women who are just exercising for exercise sake, in the fact that, oh, I did my 40 minutes today. Oh, I went to my class today. Yes, okay, but what was the purpose of that? What is your plan? What is your monthly plan? What do you want to achieve by the end of the month, the end of 6 weeks, the end of winter? Because all that feeds forward into what are you doing today when you wake up? So it all comes back to that athlete mentality. Athletes prioritize the intention and the recovery, the intention of the session, the acute recovery from the session, and sleep.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you. What if aging wasn't something to fear, but something to prepare for? As women, we're spending more time than ever thinking about our health, but the real goal isn't just living longer. It's increasing our health span, the number of years we remain strong, capable, energetic, independent, and mentally sharp. And the question is, how do we build the foundations today that will allow us to thrive for decades to come? My guest today is Dr. Stacy Sims, an international exercise physiologist, nutrition scientist, and one of the world's leading voices in women's health and performance. For decades, Dr. Sims has challenged outdated approaches to women's health, helping women better understand their physiology so that they can train, fuel, and age well. In this conversation, we explore why strength is one of the most important predictors of longevity, the impact of diet culture and the rise of peptides and GLP-1 medications, and why muscle mass, bone density, nutrition, and sleep matter more as we age than ever. In this episode, Dr. Sims shares practical science-backed steps every step of the way so women can improve their health span and become the strongest version of themselves at every stage of life. Here's Dr. Stacy Sims. Stacy Sims, welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Very pleased to have you on the show. I've been following your work for a very long time, and I love the way that you bring what you do and all of the years of research into something that's really easy for us to understand and navigate and bring into action in our lives when it comes to women's health and longevity. But I want to ask you a question. You've been advocating for women's health and longevity for so many years. It's now 2026. Would you say that women are still getting the short end of the stick when it comes to medical research?
100%. So there are two. I read the stat last week that was really compelling, where at the rate of research and funding at the moment, it's going to take over 800 years to close the gender data gap.
Wow.
I was like, what? And then we start seeing all the stuff about AI and all the, the touch points of AI interpreting. And if someone goes to Chat or Claude or something like that and puts in a question because they're curious about their symptoms or something, what they're not realizing is that the data lakes that all this information is being pulled from is the middle of the bell curve. And what's the middle of the bell curve? It's still male data. And what gets ignored are the nuances. And what's the nuances? Women's health data, ethnic diversity. And it keeps perpetuating misinformation. And the more that misinformation comes up, the more it becomes the norm and gets picked up by these algorithms. So that's extending the data gap. It's also extending misinformation. So when we start talking about the gender data gap and trying to close it, and it's 2026, it's like we have to put our foot on the gas because it's getting wider, not smaller.
So when you go into Claude or ChatGPT and you do you do this for fun to see what comes up? You add in these symptoms, and are you perplexed by some of the answers that come up?
Absolutely. And I compare them too.
Yes.
It's like you look at the language and the tone. We did a little bit of a play. There were 4 of us, and we all put in our credentials to see, like we were trying to put a profile of who's involved in certain companies and certain research projects. All of them put the men first, even though the men had the least amount of work involved in the projects. Put the men's kudos at the top behind them, and all the women had lesser impact on all of their qualifications and the stuff they did, even though two of us were the ones that were driving the research and had the most qualifications. It's just that norm of pushing the male first is still ingrained in those algorithms. We put in question in chat, and it comes up very generic and pretty mundane and very masculine. You put something in Claude or Anthropic, it comes up a little bit more nuanced, but the tone is still very masculine, and it still comes up with poor insights, where both of them will still tell you that menopause hormone therapy causes cancer and dementia. And that's based on old research. And so it's not looking at the difference of what's new research, or is it a blog, or is it actually scientific papers. So that's where we start really running into issues, because then someone will bring it up and continue that thread, and the algorithm is reading on that thread, and it just perpetuates that bell curve of misinformation.
Wow, that's so interesting. So we're so lucky to have these conversations, honestly, because this is where we get to the real human insight. You know, you've been working on getting this data together for so many years, and we have to remember the human side. So many of us are falling through this AI trap at the moment to get our information, and it is very useful in many cases. But when it comes to our health, I think we can't ignore the human side of things.
Not at all. I mean, AI is really beneficial when you're thinking about reading things that the human eye can't see. So it could be cancer tumors, cancer cells, all of that in diagnostics. But when it comes to the actual precision medicine of what is the outcome, what is the diagnosis, what do these labs mean, we need the human in the loop. Another thing that comes up quite a bit is you'll see women who'll get their labs back, and they're told that they're in the normal range, but actually it's based on the norm of a sedentary sick population, not the norm for someone who's an active woman. Or an active woman going through perimenopause will come up as a profile of having all sorts of cardiometabolic disease, when actually she's in low energy availability. But unless you have a clinician who can understand that and translate it to you, then you're going down the wrong path of getting help and your health outcomes.
That's interesting that you say that, because I did my bloods recently and I didn't have a physician really go through any of it with me because there were no major red flags. So it just got passed as, yep, all good, no need to come and see me. But I asked for a copy of my bloods and I put them through ChatGPT just to see what a breakdown of that actually meant for me. And I found it fascinating because it was broken down in such a clear, precise way to me, in a way for me to easily understand. But now I'm thinking, was it right? Was it what you would have said if you had looked at the bloods? And it's you know, even though we're getting back a normal blood test, we're still having symptoms sometimes of fatigue or exhaustion or irritability or whatever it is for us going on as humans, and we're left with no answers.
Right.
Still. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you have to remember that a blood test is one point in time. It's just one moment in time. And things like our hormones, they pulse. So you might have caught it at the high wave of a pulse or the low wave of a pulse. So it's looking at trends over time that give you more insight, not just that one blood point. The one blood point that you can rely on really is ferritin in your iron panels. And we've seen the shift from normal being 50 down to normal being 20. So 5 or 6 years ago, if you came back with a ferritin level of 50, your physician would say, hey, we need to start supplementing you, especially if you are a pre or perimenopausal woman. But now it's 20. And I know that there's so many women that are walking around feeling drained and fatigued and having signs and symptoms of iron deficiency, not full anemia, but they can't get any help because the blood tests in the normal range. But again, that's compared against the population, and the population is getting sicker and more sedentary. So of course the norms are shifting. So it's been interesting to see how that is playing out, especially when we start talking about longevity medicine, precision medicine, and what these biomarkers mean, and the misinformation that gets put out to women on these biomarkers.
Was there a things you can't unhear moment for you during your studies or your career that really made you realize the discrepancy between what was happening with male health research and female health research?
Yeah, there's one that really sticks out all the time. It was one of my supervisors who said, why do you want to study women? We don't know enough about men. It's like, because I'm not a guy. And I know that my body works differently. So that was like, oh, well, because we're over 50% of the population. So of course we need to know more about us. So that was one of the aha moments. And then the other was when I was at university and we're doing some teaching labs, and my results came back as an anomaly because I was in a different phase of my menstrual cycle and that wasn't accounted for. This is retrospective thinking on that. But in the moment when I was asking why my results were being thrown out, the postdoc that was doing the teaching lab was like, oh, well, often we do that with women's results because they're too difficult to study. I'm like, what? Oh, yeah, they have a menstrual cycle, so it makes them too difficult to study. So we don't incorporate them into research. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. So that was kind of like the sticking point. And then the other really big one was when I was 17 and I grew up in a military household where we could do whatever, there were no confines and barriers on our dreams or what we wanted to do. And got to a point where my dad asked what I wanted to do when I graduated. And I said I wanted to be an Army, Navy, or an Army Ranger or a Navy SEAL. And he's like, well, you can't. I was like, what do you mean I can't? What do you mean I can't join the military? He goes, no, you can't be a Ranger or SEAL because you're a girl. So those are like the three big points in my life where it was in my face that because I was born XX, there are confines against me that are creating a discrepancy within society and discrepancy in the how I approach my life and my performance potential. And it's not just me, it's over 50% of the population.
I love though that those things lit a fire in your belly completely, and you're like, don't tell me it's impossible because I'll show you that it's not.
Yeah. Yeah,
Good
exactly.
on you, Stacey. I love that. I love
Thanks.
that. Now, women, I want to talk about women specifically in this interview because I think, like you've just pointed out, we do get the short end of the stick so often. And today we're not going to in this conversation. But for women, I'm in my 40s, in my mid to late 40s now, and I know a lot of my friends and people around me, we're sort of veering that next step of life because we don't want to get old, we don't want to get frail, we don't want to lose our minds because we're starting to feel a little bit that way at the moment, and more forgetful and brain foggy, and I think there is this sort of fear around getting old at the moment that I'm sensing in the community but also around with the people around me. And even in the way that we look, I think has changed though. So I grew up, we're probably a similar age, when I was looking at the magazines. I had Cosmo and Dolly magazine, and it was Kate Moss on the cover, and all of the
Yep.
models were really, really thin and stick figures. And I have a curvy butt, so I was always like, well, I don't fit the mold here, so where's
Yep.
this going to happen? So there was always that, want to be really, really thin. And now I think what has happened, I've got teenage daughters, and what I'm starting to see now is that they're wanting to be more strong and bulky and have more muscle. But then what I've recently noticed again, and it's probably more women in our age group, is that they're wanting to have that thinness back, and all of these tools like Ozempic and
Mm-hmm.
peptides are coming back around, or coming
Yes.
around, and
Yes.
the thinness is the rage again. So where do you sit on all of that? What are you seeing?
Same thing. Like we grew up in the same era, right? Of seeing the heroin chic, and then started getting really excited when that no longer was. Like we had body confidence and all different sorts of body shapes and sizes coming out to celebrate the differences in body shapes. And then we had the strong is the new skinny, which is fantastic, being strong and powerful and taking up space, which is my mantra in our house because I also have a teenage daughter. And now we're seeing all the misuse of the GLP-1s to create that heroin chic, super, super skinny look again. And I navigate it with my daughter and her friends to say, to take kind of a page out of Vonda Wright's new skeletal longevity, where she's like, you can have skeletal frailty, which is what the Ozempic and heroin chic look is, because we see that there's a drop in muscle mass, there's a drop in our bone mass, and all of that leads to frailty, and we're not going to be independent. You can have skeletal longevity, which is looking at all the systems that create strong, powerful, robust women. I'm not talking about robust in body size, but I'm talking about robust as in brain health, all of the things that allow us to thrive as we get older. So I really still lean into the let's be strong and powerful, and whatever that looks like. is how you want to be and how you want to operate. It's about being stress resilient. How do you become stress resilient? Not by withholding food or trying to be small and fit into a size 2 dress. You want to be stress resilient by fueling your body, taking up that space, having that confidence to be able to push forward your ideas. And a lot of people dismiss women when they're really, really small because, oh, well, you're so demure and small that you just kind of like the side. And this is how society has always wanted women to be, small and in a box, because they're more easy to control. And I'm like, no, we're beyond that. We're getting pushed back in there. And I think it's a wave of political movement as well, of taking away women's rights and really questioning them. And then we have the let's look at what is the quote ideal for women in Hollywood. And we still see that women can't age. Women can't have any body fat. Women can't have any really strong looking muscles unless it's a movie role for them. But men, they can be in any size or shape that they want, and they still are on the screens in front of us. So it's the images we get bombarded with that bring in that social and cultural nuances that then affect our teenage daughters, right? Because we see it. We see it in the schoolyard. We see it ourselves in our houses. And I don't want that to happen again. I don't want our daughters to have to face what we did going through the Kate Moss era and feeling really awful about ourselves because we didn't fit the mold, because we know that that's not healthy. And how do we unhinge that by pushing the fueling? Let's be powerful, let's be strong, and make sure that we are being stress resilient. I don't use the diet culture words in this house. I don't use diet culture words with my daughter's soccer team. And everyone there is like, let's be strong, let's fuel, let's be really fast, and let's do what we need to do. And that's what I want for every young girl and their moms, actually.
Yeah, I'm really eyes open in my house too. So almost 17-year-old and a 14-and-a-half-year-old. And it's that pivotal age, I think, too. And I'm always like, just eat good food. Eat
Yep,
as much as you want, eat good food. And that's all you need to worry about. And your body does the rest, especially at this age. I think
exactly.
our bodies are so reactive to any great exercise that we do at such a young age as well, and any good food intake as well. So there's this beautiful period that they're in right now that they can really nurture and nourish their bodies in such an easier way than I suppose when they get older. Is that true in your
It
perspective?
is, and we have to think about the growth and development that happens in their teenage years. I mean, you get peak bone mass, your endocrine system comes into play, brain development, all of the things are still developing. And so if we are reducing food intake or having calorie deficit, none of those things get to their peak. And so if we're talking about peak health, if our peak health span is lower because we've somehow compromised the ability to reach the maximum, then we're already off the back foot when we're starting to get into our older years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think in our younger years we can obviously set ourselves up for success in the later years? And this is not good news for me because I wasn't much of a sporty person in my teens, and I've become much more athletic and love exercise as I've gotten older. So I know it can be done later, but even up until my pregnancies, I wasn't that strong, and that's one massive regret that I have, is not getting really fit and strong before I had children, because it was so much harder for me to lose the weight or retone after pregnancies and find that strength, especially if there's an abdominal separation or your body changes. So like, is your advice now for people in their teens and early 20s who want to thrive as they get older?
Yeah, the baseline for anyone really is that strength development, resistance training, strength through movement. And if we have that baseline of that, we're building bone, we're building muscle, we're building our immunity, and that brings us up to that peak. So as you start then embracing different ways of exercising or moving, you have that foundational movement. You have
It's a
that
muscle
foundational
memory,
strength.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And things like soft tissue injuries, ACLs, all that kind of stuff that happens in teenage girls. If we're training them correctly, where we're working posterior chain and we're appealing to the social side of things that keeps them physically active, then it's building that base that then allows them, maybe you fall off the physical activity wagon because it doesn't fit into your life, or you don't feel like it for a bit of period of time. You're not falling down as far as someone who's never done it. So it's like we have to think of it as stepwise increments of how we're going to build robustness as we get older. Any age is a great age to start, but the younger you start, the bigger base that you build, so that when you start having your decline, it's not a sheer cliff. It's just a very slight decline, decade to decade, instead of a massive drop off. And if we take the tone and really formulate it around what is the lean in for the young girl, is it the lean in for sports performance? Is it the lean in for better mental health? Is it the lean in for better physical health? Like, there are all different ways and touch points that we can get the physical activity in and feed it into what their goal is, and really understand the movement orientation, not necessarily just cardio or strength or being in the gym, but what is it that's going to boost the things that they're after. And then that's how they learn to love what they're doing, to build that base at a stronger period of time.
I think that is the key, is to love what you're doing and it doesn't feel like a chore, because when you're trying to drum longevity into teenagers, they're just not interested.
Yeah, they're like,
Know ourselves, right? We'll know
yeah,
ourselves back then as well. It's just like,
yeah,
I've got all the time in the world. I'm not getting old for a very, very long time. And then
right.
next minute, here we are.
I
Here
know.
we
We're
are.
like, what? What? No, I'm
What
halfway through my
happened?
life.
Hang on a
What?
moment. No, but it
Yeah.
also, I think sports too, there is that massive decline of girls dropping sports at that sort of late teenage as well. And I've seen it with my girls. They were playing soccer and really interested. And then all of a sudden, all of the girls sort of dropped off, like 90% of the girls dropped off the team sports. And it's just a thing that continues to happen, unfortunately, isn't it?
It is, but it doesn't have to. I partnered with Mecca, their Empower program, which is their nonprofit of the company, and we created a curriculum that's free to New Zealand and Australian schools about keeping girls in sport, and understanding that it's not just how you're coaching them, but how we're talking to them, the language we're using. I always bring the example of soccer, because my daughter plays soccer, and their coach was getting frustrated because he's trying to teach them corner kicks and is pairing a girl to a girl or pitting girl to girl to girl, and they just wouldn't do it. But that's how we would coach the boys. But when you're coaching girls, they want to be not singled out because they're very aware of the environment around them and they think everyone is watching them. So then if we have three girls coming and they're playing against each other in a three instead of a 1-to-1, they actually learn and meld and have fun, and then they continue. So it's the nuances of, I was reading a stat last night where New Zealand sport was under survey and report was released, and they saw that girls from 9 to 11 had twice as much dropout of physical activity than the boys. And by the age of 17, only 1/3 of the girls were actually meeting recommendation of activity for health. So if we think 2/3 of our girls have suddenly dropped out of sport, not being physically active, what's going on? So then we start looking at, again, the default is male data. It's comparing against boys. It's coaching them like boys, treating their bodies like boys, putting them in white shorts and not being concerned about a menstrual cycle that might start or heavy bleeding unexpectedly starting. So there's all these nuances that haven't been talked about or brought into the conversation that is a barrier. So if we can understand that and break those barriers and bring those conversations in, then we see an uptick of girls being in sport because they love it. They love the way it makes them feel. They love the camaraderie, the feeling of freedom. But when those barriers come in from a social construct or the fear of their menstrual cycle or period or anything like that, it puts this blanket and then boom, I'm out. So it's readjusting the conversation, readjusting the language that we're using, not talking about girl push-ups or the ladies bar. We're talking about modified push-ups and a smaller, thinner bar. So there's a lot of things that we can unpack that will improve the whole culture around it, to improve the want and need for our girls to stay in physical activity.
That's so true. And I think, we've got to lose that mindset of like, oh, they're good enough. Are they good enough to play professionally? Is this going to be a thing that they continue and become a career path? Doesn't matter. Does it?
No.
It doesn't matter. It matters that they're putting their foot on that field and running around and having a good time, regardless of whether they're going to do it professionally or not. That's not the aim for me. It was that they're running around and being active.
Right. And I think most people don't realize that by the time they're 18, they're not going to be successful in that sport unless they're the rare 0.001% of talent that is very motivated. You don't create an Olympic athlete when you're in your teens. You create an Olympic athlete when they're hitting about 20, and that's where they can take off in that professional realm. But in the get-go, we're just trying to create physical activities. Like, let's make it fun, varied, so the body is learning all different types of motor patterns and movements and keeping them healthy, especially when we're talking about mental health, because we know physical activity is one of the biggest grounders of mental health. And that often is not brought up in conversations when we have deep depression and anxiety in our teens. It's like, what kind of cognitive behavior therapy or serotonin reuptake inhibitor can we put them on, instead of going, you know what, freedom and outside and physical activity is one of the best ways that we can improve our mental health.
And it can start at any age, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about training now as we're getting older and women in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. And I know there's different perspectives out there from many different experts on the best way to train and whether to eat first or whether not to eat first or whether to fast. And the noise is loud out there at the moment, I've got to be honest. And I know for me, I'm a very much an individualized person. So I have to see what suits me in order to get the data and see how it works. But just from a general perspective, if someone says in their 30s or 40s and they're training and wanting to maximize that time that they're out there, getting fit and having that exercise 40 minutes of their day, how can they set themselves up for success so they're burning as much fat as possible and gaining as much energy as possible from your perspective?
I would reframe it and not talk about fat burning or calorie burn. I want everyone to think of themselves as an athlete. And I come from a high performance environment. So this is why I'm trying to share it out. Because if we think about why you exercise, there's an intention for it. It's not just movement. Part of it's feeling better, part of it's aesthetics, part of it's cardiometabolic health. But despite that, we want to have a set intention for every session. So this is where I bring in the athlete mentality. Athletes have a plan. They go into each session fueled, understanding what that session is for. Like, is it high intensity? Is it recovery? Is it strength? Is it power? And having that set focused for that session and recovering from it, so that they recover well enough so that the next intentional session, they can get what they need out of it. We see so many women who are just exercising for exercise sake, in the fact that, oh, I did my 40 minutes today. Oh, I went to my class today. Yes, okay, but what was the purpose of that? What is your plan? What is your monthly plan? What do you want to achieve by the end of the month, the end of 6 weeks, the end of winter? Because all that feeds forward into, what are you doing today when you wake up? When you wake up, what is your plan? Okay, you're going to go training. You need fuel for that. Why? Because we want to work with our circadian rhythm, for one, to make sure that we sleep well. Because if we don't sleep well, we don't recover well. If we don't recover well, then each session that we do is kind of a moot point. So it all comes back to that athlete mentality. Athletes prioritize the intention and the recovery, the intention of the session, the acute recovery from the session, and sleep, because sleep is where we get maximum recovery and repair. So for a general woman who's trying to like improve overall health and get the most out of everything, as well as improve body composition, consistency, of course, is key. So we want to make sure that we are maintaining consistency in what we do, but having that plan of intention. Am I going Monday, Wednesday, Friday for strength development? Great. Then you want to put a precedence on making sure that you're well fueled, well rested. Go in for strength development, and don't do supersets where it's cardio focused, because that's not strength development. Are you going in Tuesday, Thursday for high intensity work? Great. Then let's focus on really polarizing and making high intensity high and the recovery between really low, so that you can get the most out of each interval to get the adaptations that you want, and then recover really well from that by fueling, mobilizing, stretching, bringing your sympathetic nervous system down so that you can sleep well, which is where all of our reparation happens.
That's a great outlook on how to see it from a holistic level. Let's talk about fuel, because for people who are training at 6 o'clock in the morning, not hungry before they get up, or don't even have time, they literally run out of bed, chug a glass of water, put their activewear on and head to the gym. Seen it a million times. That's not fueling your body prior to exercise, is it?
No. And it's regardless of if you're exercising or not that early. If you're waking up early and you're going to have a full day of work and it's not training, you still need fuel. And I say that as from the chronobiology research, where we're looking at circadian rhythm, and we know that women's circadian rhythm is a little bit shorter than a man's. So if we wake up and we're just having water and we're rushing off in the day, then we've already had a misstep where we are telling ourselves from the most molecular level to whole body system that we are in a stress state, for one, and two, we don't have fuel, so we need to be able to break down other things to fuel until we get the food. And effectively, what we're doing is we're putting our bodies on night shift. Because if we think about shift work and the phase shifting of circadian rhythm, and we see all these health implications of shift work, where we have poor recovery, poor sleep, poor metabolic function, increase in body fat, increase in resting blood glucose. All of that is metabolic dysfunction because of this phase shift. So if we're rushing around and we don't want that to happen, then just having something small when you first get up, like within a half an hour, 40 minutes of waking up. Could be a half a banana, could be protein coffee. It could be a couple of tablespoons of overnight oats and some yogurt. So it's just enough, maybe 100 or so odd calories of carbohydrate and protein to bring your blood sugar up. Tell your body, let's drop some of the cortisol, activate our appetite hormones to work appropriately. So then everything pulses the way it should throughout the day. We don't get that afternoon wall lean and carbohydrate craving that happens when you're not eating first thing. And you're supplying fuel for your brain. Then, if you're adding training in, you've had that little bit of food, you do your training, and then you come home and have real breakfast. Don't delay it, because that's when we get most of our nutrient uptake, is right after exercise, when the body's trying to repair itself. Yeah, you'll hear conversations of there's no real post exercise window of opportunity, but the older you get, the more you want that nutrients coming in, because of the ability to recover, and for tendons and ligaments to take in amino acids, and for your muscles to uptick in those amino acids and to refill the glycogen. If you're waiting, then you're staying in a breakdown state for a much longer period of time, which is impeding recovery and adaptations. It's like if we're not eating and we're going to go into the gym and do strength training or a cardio class, then we're actually signaling to the brain that we're supposed to be up doing stuff, but yet our appetite hormones and our cortisol and our estrogen or progesterone are tied to a different timing. So what if we want to have that appropriate hormone pulse throughout the day and be able to get that melatonin peak at 9 for women or 10 for men, then we have to start in the morning. We want to fuel so that our brain is like, food coming in, great. Then you can do your exercise and your body can hit the intensities it needs to, because there's a little bit of fuel on board, and then recover. If we're looking from the absolute level of, going in and doing fasted training, what's that doing? Well, one, you're not going to be able to hit the intensities you want to, because your blood sugar isn't optimal. And two, the fuel on board is not adequate enough. So yes, you will start breaking down that muscle tissue and leaning more into amino acid use, because you don't have enough fuel on board to fuel the exercise as well as the reparation. So for across the board, just having a little bit of food makes sense. And if we think about trying to drive a car on E, how far are you going to get on fumes? And that's pretty much what people are trying to do when they're exercising without having any food. They're trying to ride the wave of fumes until they completely stop. And that's not the way that you want to think like an athlete. That's not the way you want to treat your body to be able to be stressed and adapt to that stress. And that's what exercise is, right? You're trying to stress your body to a point where it's creating a feedback system to rebuild stronger. So if you're not giving the nutrients needed for that exercise stress and stressor, it's not getting the right feedback mechanism, and you're not going to get the adaptations that you want.
Now, the fuel before the training has been clarified. The fuel after the training should be obviously high protein and well thought out as well.
If you're doing strength training, and we think about protein and some carbohydrate. If it's been more of a cardio system, women are very afraid of carbohydrate, but you need carbs. Like the more aerobic work that you do, the more carbohydrate you need. And if you're looking at protein and fiber at every eating opportunity, fiber comes from fruit and veg. And so you're also getting carbohydrate. So a good whack of protein and fiber at every eating opportunity helps with recovery, helps with reparation, helps with gut microbiome. All of these are really important to lean forward to having a really stress resilient body, especially as we age.
So the ideal meal for you personally, Stacy Sims, after a strength workout, what do you consume?
What do I lean into? Usually I do my strength training about 10 o'clock. So by the time I get home, it's either an early lunch or not. So if it's 11:30, then I know people fault me for this, but I'll have the second half of my breakfast, which is overnight oats and chia seeds and some walnuts and some yogurt and berries. I'll have half of that before and the other half afterwards. If I do an afternoon session, then it'll be dinner. And dinner is usually lots of mixed veggies and fruit in a salad with some tempeh and some tahini and some nuts and some seeds. So, like I said, I'm pretty simple, but it's always like protein and fiber, protein and fiber.
Eggs? Are you a fan of eggs after training?
Yeah, not personally, but that isn't because of eggs. It's from a personal experience when I was a kid. But eggs
Not-
themselves,
I love that. But for others, you think
yeah,
it's a beneficial
yeah,
meal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. And so comparing that to a cardio workout, do you change your meal intake, your fuel after a cardio workout, or do you tend to stick to the same?
Oh no, I'll add more carb. Like I'm a big fan of salty toast. I'm always like
Yeah,
spread and
who
grain
isn't?
toast,
Yum.
some butter, well, nutlegs, salt, and I'm like, yep, a happy camper. Sometimes I'll have an apple bagel sandwich where you're taking a bagel and you put Dijon mustard and tahini and really thin apple slices. It's a protein bagel, so you're getting carbohydrate and some veg and some fat all in there. I know it sounds really gross, but it's really tasty.
You've got a smile on your face. I think you're hungry. You're making me hungry, that's for sure. It's about that time.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. So when it comes to the ideal training, and let's sort of stick to that mid 30s to mid 50s age group,
Mhm.
because that's when sort of a lot of changes hormonally start to happen as well. And that's obviously the listener base of who's listening here today, majority of the listeners anyway. Tell us what you believe is the ideal training regime that will give us the most benefit.
Well, I don't know if I have an ideal training regime because everyone's individual and their training history matters a lot. I can say from the research and the physiological research of what happens to bone and muscle, we have the ability to control what's happening. As we start hitting perimenopause, we know that estrogen is tightly tied to the way that our muscles function. So we see that it's responsible for developing new muscle cells, and it's also responsible for how strong a muscle contraction we have based on its effect to one of our contractile proteins called myosin. So we have myosin and actin, and they bond together and kind of pull together, and that's what gives us our muscle contraction. When we go through perimenopause, that myosin starts to change its form, so it can't grab onto actin as strongly, which is why we start to lose our strength and power. People who are more cardio or running focused, they might find that as a slowdown in their running pace, no matter what they're doing. If we're looking at strength and strength oriented, all of a sudden you can't move up in your weights or you're plateaued and you have to go backwards in weights. This happens first, and then we see a loss in muscle mass. So if we're talking about strength and strength training versus hypertrophy, you can build muscle at any rep range. We know this. But strength only happens down at the low end of the rep range and the heavier loads. Not only does that help build strength and improve the way myosin responds without estrogen and stimulates muscle cell development without estrogen, we also see that that heavier end affects what we call the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So this is our cognitive, it's our reaction, it's the way that we create the thought processes. We end up with more neural connectivity. So that means that our neurons are talking to each other in a much better way than if we weren't. We see that when you're comparing the heavier loads versus moderate or body weight, you don't get the same kind of prefrontal cortex interaction with the body weight and moderate loads. So if we're looking at someone who's 35 to 50 and with the eye down to preventing or attenuating any kind of dementia and Alzheimer's risk, maintaining our independence and strength, as well as maintaining our bone density, then I tell women put a precedence on strength training and periodize heavy lifting. It is a journey. You have to learn how to lift heavy properly and some plyo work. So plyo work might be French contrast training. So this is where you're putting in some jump moves after a heavy lift, or maybe you're specifically doing some plyometric jump moves or ball slams or something like that, because then you're working on power and strength, and that can be the baseline. And if you develop that kind of strength, then all the other things that you love to do will fall into play. So if you love doing high intensity work, well, you're going to be stronger and more robust to do the high intensity work. If you love going for hikes, you're going to be stronger to be able to go for the hikes up the hills. Do you love ocean swimming? Same thing. Do you love surfing? So all the cardio stuff benefits from that strength work. We also know from concurrent research, so this is the interference between strength and cardio, that if you do the strength work first and then the cardio, you benefit as a woman. Men, it doesn't matter so much. You can do either one first. But for women, there's a slight advantage to doing the strength and power first and then the cardio. So this is another reason where I'm like, if you have 30 or 45 minutes 3 times a week and you go to the gym, you do your first 5 to 10 minutes of mobilization and warm up. So you're really getting to the joints. You're not stretching. You're really getting into opening up all the joints. Then into heavy compound lift. So that could be your back squat. It could be your deadlift. It could be your bench press. And then you're finishing with a couple of sprints. So 30 seconds or less, as hard as you possibly can. And then 2 to 3 minutes recovery. You might do that 3, 4 times. And then a little bit of mobilization and you're out. So that's a very effective workout you could do 3 times a week and get your strength, get your cardio, and then you develop that robustness for all the other things that you want to do.
It's so important. And I love that you brought up that prefrontal cortex and the fact that I only learned this a couple of weeks ago, the fact that dementia is one of the leading causes of death for women. There's so many women in this country, especially, that impacted by dementia. And what I'm hearing you say is, we can prevent a lot of that from happening by doing these specific training and improving our muscle mass and our strength and activating certain parts of our brain, which is great to know.
Cardiovascular part increases what we call BDNF, which is our brain neurotrophic factor, which is, quote, miracle grow for the brain. So it helps with total brain volume. So you need kind of both. You need the resistance training for the neural connectivity. You need some of the cardio work for creating more brain volume and healthy brain tissue, and they work together. And we know that dementia is, one of the leading causes of death for women. And unfortunately, women live for a much longer period of time than men in a much poorer state of health. And most of it is driven by the state of the brain, and that's Alzheimer's and dementia.
Do you know the stats on how many women get impacted by dementia?
So in the States, it's because I work with Maria Shriver and a women's Alzheimer's movement. 1 in 6 patients that are diagnosed with dementia are men. So that means 5 out of 6 are women. And it's like 6 million people right now in the US are suffering from dementia. So we know that most of it is women. And with Australia being a similar size, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something just as horrendous as that.
That is crazy. Now, women are complex creatures, as we've come to understand. And I know myself and a lot of people that I talk to is when I'm getting my period or have my period or I just don't feel the same energy and the same strength to want to train in the same way.
Yep.
Do we bring that into play, or do you just battle through when it comes to, getting up and getting it done in a way because you've set your days for training and this is what you do? Or are you more like listen to your body and nurture what you're feeling right now and adapt your training to that?
Adapt your training to yourself. Consistency. So if you have scheduled to go to the gym, keep going, but you change what you're doing there. The menstrual cycle is interesting because 5-6 years ago, there was this definitive in the low hormone phase, you do XYZ. In the high hormone phase, you want to do this. But 1, we don't know if you've ovulated. And 2, the variation within the hormone fluxes of those phases is so changeable from cycle to cycle that it's hard to actually discern what you should be doing. So this is where we look at our own cycle. And it's like, I know that the day before my period starts, I feel invincible. And I'm like, yeah, let's go super hard. And then for 3 days afterwards, I feel like shit. So I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I plan that day to be the day where I'm hitting it hard, and then I'll have a couple of recovery days. But some women feel invincible 2 days after their period starts and awful the 4 days leading into it. So you lean into that, right? You're like, okay, I know my own pattern, and I know when I can schedule hard days and when I should be looking more to lean into some more active recovery or just some yoga or stretching or something like that. And it works because it helps you periodize your training, and you don't even realize that you have, because that's the whole plan, right? You have hard days and you have recovery days. And some women lean into using their menstrual cycle to dictate what are your hard days and what are your easy days. And other people are like, I'm not that affected by my menstrual cycle, so I'm just going to plan it out and go.
This is why I can never have a male PT, because I really need them to understand
I
that
know.
I'm not the same on every day of the week. It's just
Right.
not my body, and not many of us. We're all in the
No.
same boat, right? I
Right.
love that we
Exactly.
deeply understand this. Thank you for all of that. It's really helpful, and it's sort of busted a lot of myths that I had in my head. I want to loop back to the whole peptides thing that we talked about at the start too, because not only, there's the Ozempic and the GLP ones that we've talked about, but there's so many other peptides that are presenting. I was literally walking down the street last week, and I stopped and saw a few people that I know, and this conversation of peptides kept popping up. And they're like, "Oh, I've just started on the peptides 3 weeks in. I'm feeling amazing. Oh, I've just started on the peptides too. I'm doing this. I'm feeling amazing." And I was just like, hang on, stop. Why is everyone on peptides right now? What is it? I need more information. And I thought in my head, well, I'm interviewing Dr. Stacy Sims, so maybe she can provide some insight into this. And then one of my friends sent me a little fact sheet on all of these peptides and what they help with. So this feels like there's a massive amount of information out there, and a massive menu of peptides that can be selected from someone on the internet. Please explain to me if you think this is causing us more harm than good, or what your take is on peptides.
This is where we see marketing is way stronger than science.
Mm.
We see the buzz of marketing is created as big. Everyone needs to be on peptides. But there is very limited human studies on them. And in it, it's been very specific populations. So when we start seeing everyone going on TB 500, BPC 157, all of these other kind of healing properties, and you have these stacks like the Wolverine stack and all of the things that are out there in marketing, there's no science behind it. So one of the things that we have is the compounding of the peptides is very iffy. We know that there's been some really in-depth reviews of how are these compounded, what is the purity of it, and there's lots of lead and other heavy metals in a lot of the stuff that people are injecting because there isn't regulation around it. We also don't know exactly what the peptides are doing. So we see people start taking it and they're like, yeah, I feel amazing. Placebo, right? We don't know. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. We don't know because we don't have any of the trials to tell us. The science hasn't caught up yet. Definitely promising for sure. Peptides that are out there, they're small branches of amino acids that have a specific role in their use when they're produced naturally. So, what I mean by that is like BPC 157 is a string of amino acids that come from our gastric system, so our digestive system. So, if we have gastric juice, which is very, very acidic, somehow leak out into our bodies, it's very damaging. So this compound, BPC 157, is in the acid and it will turn and start to fix the tissue that's being burned by the acid to shut it down. So people have taken that concept of, yes, it's a healing property because look how it heals in this situation. But the studies to see, does it work outside of its initial situation to heal a tissue? Has it been done? No, it hasn't. So this is where we might have a lot of animal studies. We might have one study that has 5 people in it that shows some benefit and it's been blown out of proportion. There is a lot of research being done right now on peptides, but that has not been disseminated out. The results haven't been disseminated out. We don't know what the long-term research is. We don't know if it's actually bioavailable, if you're just taking it orally or if you do have to inject it. There's so many unknowns. And full disclosure, when I tore my meniscus and hamstring a year ago, February, everyone's like, oh, you need peptides, you need peptides. So I did injectables. Did I feel any different? No. Is it because I was so severely injured that it didn't make a difference? Or was it actually not beneficial? I don't know. And then that's me who knows all of this. There's no science or anything. And I got wrapped up into it because I was injured in the moment and I wanted to feel better. So I understand the draw. But when I take a step back and I look at all the stuff that's coming out and there's not even one white paper on any of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And now all these people want to use it. And then I take it the question of, have you done all the lifestyle things first? Have you done all the mobilization? Are you doing the isometric work to improve tendon and ligament health? Why are we leaning into peptides? What is it? It's the longevity marketing that's pushing it so much, and the fear of missing out, that we're going to miss the train and we're going to get old before our peers. But there's no evidence to support that.
It's funny. I saw an Instagram reel a couple of days ago, and it was 3 men. 2 were sitting on a park bench, and they were normal looking guys in their mid 30s. And then their mate was entering the scene, and he was almost like had this amazing filter on, and he's walking slowly towards them, and they said, "Wow, you look amazing. What have you been doing?" And he's like, "I'm on the peptides." And they're like, "Wow, oh wow, we need to get some of those." And he's like, "But I've only got 2 months to live. I'm dying on the inside." And they look at him, and he's like, "But at least I look good."
I love that. That's so great. Which reminds me of a reel that I saw, and it was about the GLP. So it was a picture of this really tiny little puppy, and it was on the side of the road, and you could see its bones, and it was really kind of helpless. And it's like, if you were to see this dog on the side of the road, you would pick it up, you would warm it up, you would feed it and bring it back to life. And then it takes a shot to the Grammys of all the actresses that were super skinny. And like, why are we not doing this for our Hollywood actresses?
Oh gosh.
I was like, oh my God, it's so true.
It's so funny how these reels just play in your mind, and you're like, okay, yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing everything that you have. Now, like we said at the start, there's so much information out there. If there's anything that you want people to take, if there's women listening here today and they're getting into that older age bracket, or, that middle age bracket, I should say, what do you want them to know? Let's say a few actionable steps that they can take to set themselves up for a wonderful health span. I love that term that you coined, the health span.
Very first thing is, like, if you're using a wearable, don't rely on it, because the algorithms in a wearable are based on male data. So things like heart rate variability, not appropriate unless you're looking at trends over time. So most of the objective data that women can get, use it as trends over time. Same with labs. Like, don't look at a one point in time. Look at trends over time, because that's going to give you the biggest picture of where your weak points are. And then remembering that the pillars of longevity are all about being stress resilient, and that's through strength in body and mind. So what do? Strength training. Maybe we start there so we can improve our overall muscle and bone and brain health. Then we have proprioception and agility. That also comes with strength training, but we want to put in some single leg work, or some jumping movements, lateral jumping movement for agility and proprioception. Then we have our social interaction and our soul food. So this is making sure that you have contact with people. Maybe you're doing a group workout. Maybe you're going to hike with your best friend. All that is super important. So those tend to be some of the big things. And then nutrition as well. It's like, how are we fueling? It's not about calorie deficiency or burning a certain amount of calories. It's about the quality of the food and how we're fueling our bodies for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, so that we can lean into being strong and stress resilient. So find one of those weak points and work on that. Don't try to do everything all at once. It doesn't work that way. We have plenty of time. And just go, okay, well, I'm going to start with strength. I don't have a history in strength. How do I start? Maybe we start with some body weight work, with the idea of in 6 months, we're working to heavier lifting for more brain health. And maybe you start with a friend. Maybe you start with an app. Maybe you start by yourself for 10 minutes first thing in the morning before anyone else is up. Find how it works for you. Be consistent with it. And then work on that one pillar towards longevity.
I love that those pillars are there for us. And it really always does come back to these pillars. It's the strength, it's the good food, it's the sleep, and like you said, the community. So if you're listening today, head out there and take some action steps. And I know I've done it before. I've jumped into the gym. It's not my happy place, to be honest, but it does get easier after a while once you start lifting, and then you get pretty chuffed with yourself that you're able to do it, and surprised after a little while, and our bodies do respond in the best possible way. Dr. Stacy Sims, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all of your knowledge. If you're not already following Stacy, do so on Instagram. She always has incredible information out there, and I feel like you're constantly researching and letting us know the new data when that comes up. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the show. If you want access to the full conversation of this episode, you can find the link in the show notes. And also make sure you rate and review if there's something in this that you just could not unhear. And be sure to share it with someone who you think might benefit from listening.